Hi everybody, this is Jenny. My channel is called Senior Perspective. I'm glad you're here. Today we are going to be reviewing the show called The Traitors on Peacock for free. It's the free version so everybody can watch it, peacocktv.com. And today's episode is episode 5. Let's get started.
Welcome to my castle. Amidst this world of bloodshed, I am your humble narrator. So step inside, stay a while in the company of the traitor.
So this episode kicks off where the last one left off, which is that the 3 traitors were meeting with their cloaks in the dark of night at their location that I keep forgetting to write down the name of. And they're like around the circle, take off their cloaks, and Phaedra went in on Parvati. So this is kind of continuing that a little bit. In the beginning of this episode, Parvati kind of defends herself, but then says, listen, I understand we're working together. Let's let bygones be bygones. You can pick who we kill tonight since I'm the one that killed Ekin-Su. So Phaedra throws out 2 names, and she says first, what about Sandra? And they're like, well, Sandra's a good player, so that could be a possibility. And then she said, what about Tamra? Which shocked me, because I thought, Tamra, that's another housewife. And I thought she was throwing out the name Tamra almost as like a decoy to show them I'm willing to vote out my own people. But in the end, because I get to pick, I'm not going to pick Tamra. I'm going to pick the other one. That was where my brain was going. However, that's not how it all shook out in the end. The reason why Phaedra thought Tamra might be a good name is because nobody would suspect Tamra. And then Phaedra, later on, kind of tipping my hat here, but I'm sure all of you watched the show already. Phaedra thinks a housewife won't vote out another housewife, so a housewife isn't a traitor. So that would be another reason. And just overall confusion, because everybody would be like, well, why Tamra? I don't understand the strategy here. Of course, that's the point of being a traitor, is not to show your cards, not to have a clear line on who you're voting out as to pointing to who you are voting those people out. You do want to create confusion. So anyway, in the end, breakfast the next day, so funny. First people down there are CJ and Trisha. No, not Trisha. CJ and Janelle. And CJ's full on paranoid. He's like now convinced that something's wrong because he's the first one down to breakfast, because he's never been the first down to breakfast before. It's the paranoia is heightened for sure.
There's no one here.
We're the first ones? I've never been first to breakfast.
Is that a good thing? Is that something? And now the paranoia sits in because we're the first ones here. I don't know, especially what happened last time with the poison.
Somebody has to be first to breakfast. It means nothing, CJ. It's very funny. CJ trusts Janelle. Janelle trusts CJ, right? So they're collaborating, and CJ says, I think there's a housewife that's a traitor. And Janelle said, I don't think there's a housewife that's a traitor. I think that the housewives are all working together as faithfuls to figure out who the traitor is, but I don't think one is a traitor. Janelle expands on why the housewives, there was the philosophy that all the traitors were housewives. And that was the previous episode. I think CJ threw that out, that or majority of housewives. And that's why all the challenge players were getting voted out and no housewives were. And here's Janelle's other rationale for why it's not a housewife.
People keep throwing the housewives out there as traitors. Let's just be real. They don't have the skill or the strategy to have this mastermind about who to murder.
Savage. All right, so the next 2 down to breakfast are John and Peter. And Peter is savvy. Peter's onto this. He's the only one who truly intellectually is really playing this game. And he admits that here and in his talking head. Peter said that this is very different from being on The Bachelor. On The Bachelor, you completely lead with your heart. And here you completely lead with your head that this is all smart strategy. Although I do want to say, on The Bachelor, your heart can deceive you. Your emotions and your feelings are deceptive. They're not all right and true and honest all the time. They can lead you astray. So I don't remember how The Bachelor turned out for Peter. But if he didn't use his mind at all and he solely relied on his heart, I don't think it turned out that well. But I might be wrong. I should look this up. Peter said that he has been focusing on trying to figure out a way to get the traitors to go against each other. He also admitted that he's thinking about this 24/7, which is a figure of speech because there's no way he can be thinking about it 24/7 unless he doesn't sleep. Anyway, he did admit that he has thoughts and strategies and theories that race through his head all day long. And I believe it. Like, I think he is full on trying to figure this out. So when it comes to who was dead, Peter says he thinks one of 3 people were killed last night. And it was either Sandra, Trishelle, or Sheree, which is really interesting because all 3 of them are faithful. So all 3 of them could have been voted out. He didn't pick a traitor at all. Peter is on. They got to get rid of Peter. Honestly, I don't think anyone realizes, I don't think any of the traitors realize how smart Peter is in this game. I know they don't, and that will come up later. So we find out at breakfast that Tamra is indeed dead. I am surprised. But then I get that Phaedra's taken the heat off herself because they would think they wouldn't vote one of their own out. So now they're not going to be looking at housewives for who's a possible traitor. I don't know. Phaedra's playing this. You know what? All 3 of the traitors are playing it well. As we can see, look how far they've gone in the game, and nobody has guessed a traitor yet. So Tamra goes down to the infamous chair that has the note on it, and she opens it up and reads it and says she's a traitor, and she cries. Well, boy, these people are really getting into this game. Or is she crying because they get paid per episode? How many times they appear on TV as incentive to stay in the game and to work hard and compete? Don't know. And Tamra ends her little goodbye speech with this.
This is way worse than Housewives. I didn't know it was so cutthroat. I just hope it's not a housewife in there that murdered me.
Ooh. Although, I don't know if, like, Phaedra and Sheree are close because they're both on Real Housewives of Atlanta. The other housewives, they don't know as well unless they went on one of those trips. Sometimes they have these trips abroad where they take random housewives from different, I haven't seen any of them. I'm not really interested in it. But they take them and put them on a trip and try to have somebody cause drama and make it interesting. And none of it sounds interesting to me whatsoever. So they could have met on one of those trips. But I could see Phaedra not being into an OC housewife. So maybe it's not so shocking that she's out. So Phaedra's point in voting out Tamra was to cause confusion and to take people off her trail. And it worked. And watch this.
No way.
Why Tamra? Oh my God. Are there any boiled eggs?
I'm dying. Phaedra's so funny. Did I not say Phaedra makes for good TV? Love her or hate her, she is good TV. I love people who have good, quippy one-liners, and she is one of those. Man, she cracks me up. So CJ kind of tests his theory that he thinks Dan might be a traitor right at breakfast in front of everybody by saying, hey, Dan, who do you think is the traitor? Because Dan has not shared with anyone, which I think is a terrible strategy. We've talked about this before.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with? Oh my goodness. I don't know what Siri thought I was just asking. Okay, back to the show. All right, what was I saying? What we were talking about? So at the end of breakfast, CJ calls out Dan, says, Dan, who do you think the traitor is? And Dan's like, I don't really know right now. He's like, well, you gotta have some theories. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm testing some things out. He's sharing nothing again in front of everybody, which is really putting a target on his back now. I still don't think he's aware of how big the target is on his back. I think he's going to go back and watch this and be like, oh my gosh, they were on to me a while ago. I don't know how I kept slipping by this entire time. But yeah, it's not looking good that he's naming nobody. Right at this time at breakfast, Peter turns to the person next to him and whispers, Dan's a traitor. Yeah, he is. Peter knows. Peter's the smartest one in this game for sure. In the interviews, Peter said he also thinks it's Dan because if Peter were the traitor, he'd be doing the exact same thing that Dan is doing right now, which is flying under the radar, not throwing names out there, not trying to get any kind of target on your back, but he's flying so low under the radar, he is getting a target on his back. So after breakfast, there's a whole group of guys sitting around, and Kevin throws out that he thinks Janelle's a traitor. And he thinks Janelle is a traitor because she has been really gunning hard for certain people, and she's been wrong every time. So he thinks she's the traitor, pushing for people to vote one way and get these faithfuls out. The truth is, no, Janelle just hasn't figured out the game. She's not as good a player as she thinks she is, I guess. Who are the great players in this game? Well, you have to say all three traitors are, because they've all thrown. I mean, Dan's doing the worst of the three traitors in terms of he's got a lot of targets on his back, but still, you have to put them up there as playing a really good game because nobody's figuring them out. Also, Peter, even ahead of the traitors, I think Peter's on to a lot of people. And as long as he can let the traitors not realize he's on to all of them, then that's okay. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else. Of course, we can't see all the conversations that are happening all the time. But CJ seems to be on to Dan too, which puts him higher up. I mean, maybe Janelle, but Janelle didn't do a good job of being really likable to people. She was a little aggressive in her gameplay, but she was on to Dan. So Janelle also admitted in her interview that she sees Dan doing all the same things and strategies that he did in Big Brother when she played alongside him in that game. And his strategy is lay low, lay low, lay low, lay low. And then when there's just a few players left, start going for the jugular and be aggressive in his gameplay. And that's how he won Big Brother. You see a side conversation with with Dan talking to John and Janelle. And in that conversation, Dan says, I'm very close to revealing a traitor. I've been watching somebody really closely, but I'm not going to say the name yet. Like, why not? Why not? Everyone else is throwing out names and strategy. He doesn't even have a strategy like, oh, I think it's housewives, or I think it's challenge players, or I think it's alpha males. I mean, at least Larsa threw out strategies. I mean, she was missing the mark. Like, here's the bullseye. She's shooting over here. But she tried. For the last, 2 episodes, I've been at the very end going, are they going to vote him out? Are they going to vote him out? He keeps seeming like he's slipping by. I don't know how much longer this is going to last. Eventually, Dan is getting voted out. So now we get to the challenge. And this is where I stopped taking notes. Everything else is off the top of my head. Here we go. So in the challenge, they had to split the groups into 6 players outside, the rest of the players on the inside of the castle. The 6 players on the outside were split up into teams of 2. They had to go and run to these where you call out for birds. I know that they're called duck blinds. Are they called bird blinds too? Are they still called blinds when you call out? And but that's for bird watching. You don't call out for birds and then shoot them. So maybe they're not blinds. I don't know. Let me know down below if they're called bird blinds. But it looked like a duck blind where you call out with a duck call. To have a duck come by, and then you normally shoot them. So they call out with they run in teams of 2 to the different, we'll call them blinds for sake of nothing else, to the different blinds, and there's bird calls there, and they call out on the bird calls, and then they listen, and they get a call back, which is different from the call that's on their little blower things. So the call they hear back, they have to then radio to the people inside the castle and imitate the call Woohoo! Woohoo! It was great.
Repeat. Once more.
And then they had to listen to it, and then they had to go around the castle, and there were these birds, stuffed birds everywhere on pedestals, and they had to push the button that made the call sound for that species of bird. And I don't know how many there were a ton. They had to keep listening to all the calls until they could hear the one that they thought matched what they heard on the walkie-talkie. And then take it to Alan Cumming and see if they were correct. This was such an enjoyable challenge to what can I just say? I stopped watching Survivor and that because they get redundant and the challenges get redundant. And this is just refreshing to have something completely out of the box, like nothing I've seen before. And it's funny. It was funny listening to them. They'd hear the call and then they'd all keep repeating it out loud. So all of a sudden you see a team of like 10 people going, caw-caw, 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 over and over again so that they had it in their head as they were listening to the other bird calls. It was priceless. And you could see Alan was also laughing as they're all running back and forth making these bird calls. It was great. Good television. Good idea. Good job on the production team for this one.
Sounds like Janelle when she doesn't get a shield.
I mean, come on. Run, John, run!
I found it!
Also, outside, in one of the blinds, there were 2 shields. So the players that were going around together, they would each get a shield if they found them, going to all these different blinds, making these calls. Okay. Without boring you all on who made the calls and who didn't make calls and all that, they were going around. In the end, Bergie and Trishelle found the shields. All right. Now, Peter, in all his brilliance, when the game ends, and they did really well with it. They made like 15 grand out of a possible 20 or 10 grand out of a possible 15. I think that's what it was actually. They did really well with going. Sheree and Kevin neither can read a map. They had 2 people together who had no map reading skills. So they're walking around like the blind leading the blind. I would have suspected that they had the shields because it took them so long to find the first blind. And their strategy was to find the blind first, or find the shields first. Completely unsuccessful. But they didn't even stumble upon one of the bird blinds on the way, or they would have gone in. Like, they just didn't even know. And then they're like, are we holding this upside down? I mean, they're a mess. So they all end up back in the castle. And as everyone's saying hi and that's everyone, Peter starts whispering in everyone's ears that we're outside. Nobody say who got the shields. That'll protect everybody who was out there, because his philosophy was no traitors were out there. Now, he doesn't know that for a fact, but his philosophy was correct. I just thought it was brilliant. Peter is thinking 3 steps ahead of everybody in this game. It's so good that he's a faithful and not a traitor, because it's fun to see his strategy and how he's thinking through it. But I will admit, I don't know why, but I'm 100% rooting for the traitors. I don't know if it's because we were kind of introduced to them first, we got to know them more, because Parvati, not one of my favorite people in the world. Phaedra, I've always thought is funny. Dan didn't know him at all, and so I have no emotional connection to him. And yet, I am rooting for Dan and Phaedra and Parvati. So, I don't know if it's the way it's being edited, that it's encouraging you to kind of like take that side, and it's probably because it's more from the viewpoint of the traitors, so that's probably why. I don't know. So I'm so excited seeing Peter figuring all this stuff out, and then on the other hand, I'm like, oh no, Peter's onto them. You got to get rid of it, but don't get rid of him, because I love watching how his mind works. All right, so he whispered in all their ears, and then Janelle, when Alan says, does anyone want to reveal who got the 2 shields? And Janelle said, we as a team of 6 have decided not to reveal to anybody who got the shields, which essentially shields all 6 of them. Possibly. I mean, you can do a stab in the dark and guess one of them. But I just thought that was clever. Clever. All right, but it gets one better. And Peter like steps it up to another level. He then, after nobody reveals anything, decides to secretly go up to people and go, by the way, I got the shield. He wants people to think he has a shield because in his theory, now I don't know if this theory is correct, he thought Bergie was the next one on the chopping block. I don't know why. I would love to know. I would have loved production to probe a little bit more and for them to share. Why does he think Bergie's the next one to get voted out? What kind of threat is Bergie? I don't get it. So I don't know where he's coming at with that, but Bergie has a shield. So Peter is saying, I'm going to plant the seed to people who I think are the traitors and say to them, I got the shield, but don't tell anybody, okay? So that they, as traitors, go, okay, Peter has a shield, we can go after Bergie. And when they go after Bergie and Bergie has a shield and shows up to breakfast, then he'll know, it'll kind of reveal who the traitors are, or at least one of the people he planted it with, right? So the people that he told this to were CJ, Dan, and Parvati. He's on to 2 of the 3 traitors. And sure enough, nobody suspects Phaedra. She's doing so good. And Parvati, I think it's just because she doesn't really have any allies in the game at all. The only other survivor people there are Sandra, and the 2 of them hate each other coming into the game, and they're clearly not really working together now either. So I'm guessing that's why it's Parvati that he suspects. CJ, a couple people have suspected, but I think it's just because he's a really good game player. I haven't heard any concrete reasons why, but so Peter told all 3 of them that he is, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, shoot, Dan's going to be out. So let's see how it plays out. So now in conversations around the castle, Janelle throws out that she thinks Dan is a traitor. Kevin is there. He's like, I don't understand why. What has Dan done to really be a traitor? She's like, he hasn't really said anything. And Kevin's like, I don't know. Janelle has been really sloppy. She's been like throwing out all these people. She's been wrong. So he doesn't believe her whatsoever. At this point, MJ also is suspecting Dan, but she admits Janelle's gotten her hands dirty and she's been wrong a lot. Maybe she's working for the other side. So at this point, Dan is having a conversation off with Sandra. We don't know what they're talking about. And Sheree comes up to MJ. I don't remember if she was in on that conversation or not. And Sheree's like, oh, we got to talk. And the 4 of them together go into a room. And MJ spills the beans. She's like, Dan, Janelle is gunning for you. And he's like, what? Well, why? I don't understand. And somebody else is like, I thought that was your girl. And she's like, I don't know, but she's coming after you hard. So MJ, who was suspecting Dan, quickly flipped after listening to Kevin and is now thinking it's Janelle. And she's sharing with Dan that Janelle's coming after him hard. I just think this is amazing. I'm glad Dan has this information now so he can protect himself. But he doesn't know that Peter's coming after him just as hard, if not harder. And now we have a twist that comes into the game. So now we're getting ready to go to the round table at the end of the day when we're going to be doing our voting, right? Well, earlier in the episode, Alan Cumming had mentioned that there was going to be a big surprise for them later in the day. The big surprise is another person coming in to play the game. And into the round table, he's like, oh, I don't remember how Alan exactly said it, but he basically said, here is a new player for you. Here's the surprise. And it is Kate Chastain.
Did you miss me?
Below Deck royalty. She is the best. If anyone watched Below Deck, she was on since season 1, episode 1. She was an OG. She is hysterical. She speaks her mind. She says it like it is. It's a love-hate relationship. There's a lot of things she says and does that I don't agree with at all, but I cannot deny that she's good television. She makes me laugh. And she is just like a Phaedra in that these quips, they come out so quick. She's brilliantly funny and delivers everything with zero emotion. She's a straight man.
It's probably a love letter from Alan. I think he's obsessed with me.
She doesn't smile. She just says the line. And it's precious. It's golden.
Dear Kate, you are faithful. I'm a little disappointed that I'm not a traitor this time because I really want to see the turret. And I really want a special coat, the hood, but it's velvet.
I mean, I love her.
And also, I'd like the power to get rid of people I don't like. Just like, let's get rid of that one. She ate all the croissants at breakfast. Murder her.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm just giddy to watch the rest of the season. I hope she doesn't get voted out right away. And I think possibly she was on Traitors 1 because when she said, oh shoot, I wanted to be a traitor this time made me think she has been on it before and she was a faithful before. That's my suspicion in all of this. I have not seen season 1, but I heard Boston Rob is on it from Survivor. And if she's on it too, I'm definitely eventually going to go back and watch it. I'm not sure if I'll do the whole review on here of it, but I'm definitely going to watch it in my free time. I don't have a whole lot of that, but when I get a chance, because she makes me laugh all the time. Below Deck has never been the same since she left it. All right, so she shows up and she ends up sitting down at the table and she's like, all right, well, who hates who? Let's spill the beans. I don't know anything that's going on. And she gets people to come out of their shell a little bit. She starts saying, who do you think is a traitor? Who do you think is a traitor? So at the round table, Kevin's the first one to speak. He's like, I'd like to speak, and I would prefer it if nobody interrupts me, because this group all tends to interrupt each other, just to give you a heads up, Kate. Everybody's like, no, all right. Kevin throws out Janelle's name. He gives his rationale for why and how she's been misleading everybody, and she basically defends herself. Bergie speaks up, and he basically defends Janelle by saying, listen, if I'm the traitor, I'm not going to be keeping throwing out all these names and putting targets on my back. I don't think she's acting like a traitor. I think a traitor is more somebody who would be quiet, like Dan. And Bergie also said, I think the reason why she's still here is because the traitors are enjoying the fact that she keeps throwing out names that are incorrect and drawing a lot of attention to herself, thus taking it away from the traitors. Then Janelle says she thinks it's CT. So both her and Peter think CT are one of the traitors. And she throws out that she thinks Dan and Sandra are also traitors. Now Sandra takes offense at this. And Sandra says, look, I've been working with you this entire time. If you've said nothing, now all of a sudden I'm a traitor, what's that about? So she got on Sandra's bad side, which is good. So then Sandra is asked by Kate, who do you think is a traitor? And she goes, well, I've been giving Janelle the benefit of the doubt this whole time, but not anymore. Now she's going to throw out my name. I'm not a traitor, so why put my name on the chopping block? I think it's Janelle. And then CT speaks up and says, it's not me, and what's the deal? Like, we've been working together too. Dan doesn't. Dan's not defending himself. Maybe he is a quiet guy. I don't know. Man needs to speak up. I mean, he does eventually, but John defends Janelle. John says, listen, I think she's got a lot of great skills and all that, but I don't think she's using them in terms of being a traitor. And so Kevin says to John, well, John, who do you think is a traitor? And John said, well, I told you last night. I think you are. Okay. Then there's a little bit of Kevin keeps talking, and as he's talking, Kate turns to whoever's sitting next to her, which I think may have been MJ, and she said, what is his name? And she goes, oh, that's Kevin. She said, Kevin? And she said, yeah. And then Kevin goes, I'm speaking here, Kate. Hi. Nothing like trying to get somebody upset with you right out of the gate. I mean, Kevin is seeming more and more arrogant the more he's on the show. Liking him less and less. Not good looking anymore. Remember I said, episode 1? Off the cuff, I think he's the best looking guy on the show, but that can change. Oh, it's now changed. So then Kate says, is there anybody else who has any other suspicions on who's a traitor? And Peter comes out and says, listen, I hate this because we're friends, but Dan, there has to be at least one guy traitor. And out of all the guys that are here, I just feel like you haven't shared anything. You haven't proposed any theories. And so you seem like you're the traitor to me. So Dan finally gets to speak up. And he did an okay job of defending himself. His whole manner of speaking and his voice and the tone of it and all that, he talks very kind of weaselly. Like he's definitely not an alpha male. Just in terms of his presence and his demeanor. He seems very meek. And so he's defending himself, but he's definitely not being aggressive about it. But then that might also be his gameplay, and why he's been so successful in the past is that he's just kind of that sweet, loving guy. And I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm not the traitor. I'm just trying to figure things out, and I'll share it when I figure it out. But I don't want to throw out names and be incorrect. I don't know. I thought he did okay in the room, but I was curious to see how the votes were going to go down. So then Janelle comes out to Dan and she says, listen, the way you're playing the game, we're friends and we knew each other coming into this and we've been collaborating, and yet you haven't given me one name this entire time of who you think it is. Why is that? And he's like, oh no, it's a good question. Like, I'm just trying to figure everything out, and then I'm going to come up with a name, and I'm very close, and she's like, well, here we go again, He said, I'm playing this game like I played Big Brother. And she goes, you won Big Brother. Oh, Dan, that wasn't a good argument for yourself. He points out that he does have a couple people he's been confiding in that implies that she's not one of them. He said, the way I play Big Brother, I just have a couple really close people, and I do reveal to those close people, and I give 1,000% trust in them. Janelle comes back with, you've done nothing in this game. You've done nothing. And Dan's like, well, by doing nothing, that means I'm a traitor. I just want to get this straight. She goes, yeah. And he's like, all right. Last vote. So now the voting begins. They start revealing, and it's like Janelle, Dan, Janelle, Dan. It gets to the point that if Janelle gets one more vote, I think she had 4 and he had 3 or something like that. If she got one more vote, she was going to be voted out, and the next person voted on her. I love what Dan said when he wrote her name down. He said, Janelle, you are either the traitor or you're a faithful that I can't trust. That is a good point. And then somebody else repeated that exact same thing later on, because they went on to reveal what the rest of the people showed and how they voted. So it ends after the round table. All the guys are sitting in a room together. The guys all say to Dan, you got to come up with something. You're not saying anything in this game. It's ridiculous. And Dan says, listen, if I survive the night tonight, then I'll take my shot tomorrow. So he's got to come up with something tomorrow, next episode, to have a philosophy of who the traitor is and throw out a name. Of course, he'll be wrong because it won't be a traitor, and that might make him look more like a traitor, but I don't know. It seems like that's how it's going to go down. Then the girls are all talking with Kate. Kate's trying to catch up, and she's asking questions like, how did Ekin-Su die, and how did this die, and they're sharing about the poison and everything, and Kate just goes, I'm just really surprised that they're all so bad at this game. Oh, it's true, Kate, it's true. But it's good, I guess, because I feel like I'm a traitor. I don't know why I feel like I'm a traitor. So apparently during this time that they're talking, somebody had mentioned about the whole poisoning thing and that, and somebody also mentioned that Parvati was behind the bar offering to give drinks to everybody. So that's where I think a lot of the women in the back of their mind are thinking it's Parvati. And Phaedra did say that a lot of the people think that Parvati is a traitor. So she has said that she has heard that in circles. And so I'm thinking this is that circle, because right away Kate's like, I'm not going to drink from Parvati behind the bar. What are you talking about? Of course, Kate doesn't realize they weren't told before that night how somebody was going to be poisoned or if they were even going to get poisoned. So Kate doesn't have the whole full story. Clearly, if somebody knows somebody's going to get poisoned that night, they're not going to take food or drink from anybody. So that was a little bit misleading. The other thing I learned in this episode is that the shield protects you from being killed by a traitor, but it doesn't protect you from being voted out. I don't know if I realized that before. I don't know if anyone with a shield actually got voted out before, but clearly, oh no, Janelle didn't have a shield, but everyone was voting for her, and Peter had told at least 3 people who he thought were traitors that he thought she had a shield. I don't know. Write it down below. I'm not clear on that. I've never seen somebody not vote for some. I think the shield only protects you from the traitors killing you. I really do. Because there's never been any conversation about, well, we can't vote for that person. They have a shield. Yeah. People wouldn't have put Janelle's name down if they would have thought she may have had a shield. Or it would have, at least the conversation would have come up. I haven't seen it come up at all. I might be wrong, but this is what I'm deducing from what I'm seeing. So now we have the traitors in the dark of night with their cloaks meeting in their meeting space. And they were like, whew, that was a rough day. And Dan's like, yeah. And they're like, Dan, there's a lot of suspicion that you're the traitor. He's like, yeah, I think I can fix that. I just need to be a little bit more vocal. And Phaedra comes out and says, yeah, but Dan, your vocal has to make sense. You can't be more vocal by saying, I'm still thinking about it and I have philosophies and I have ideas, but I'm not saying anything yet. That's not working. Say it like it is, Phaedra. I almost want Dan to get voted out now just because I don't like how he's playing the game as a traitor. I don't. So then Parvati says, all right, well, what name are you going to throw out tomorrow to be more vocal? Who do you think you're going to target? And he goes, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to sleep on it tonight and then decide. And Phaedra's like, oh my gosh, now you're doing it to us. You don't have a name. You don't have any idea. I'm like, I know. He's starting to annoy me a little bit. Come on, Dan. I was really on your side. I don't know. And I don't know what name I got to think of. Why doesn't he just say, let's talk about it together as a group? I don't know. He's starting to become too shifty to me. And I'm thinking that the other traitors are going to get to the point that they feel like they can't trust him either. And they might be like, yeah, it's Dan. Let him be voted out. And then Phaedra has a great one-liner again. She is is it a mortician? A mortician? Somebody who works? I should know. Somebody who would embalm somebody and who runs a funeral director kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway, she has whatever that license is, and she comes out with this great one-liner.
Get your suit ready, because if you play like this, I'm going to be embalming you myself. Get it together.
She's like, listen, I'm going to be embalming you myself. Get your suit ready for your casket. She's so great. All right. So now Dan's like, all right, who are we going to vote out tonight? We have an issue now because of the fact that the 6 of them could possibly have a shield and be protected from the vote. Parvati says, well, Peter came up to me and said that he and Janelle had shields, which, since Janelle is voted out, I can deduce that means a shield does not protect you from it. Because if they believe that maybe Janelle had a shield, there's no way she could have been voted out. So Peter saying he and Janelle had shields would have been an absolute lie. All right, so now we know for a fact shields don't protect you in the voting. They just protect you against the traitors. So then Dan said, oh yeah, Peter took me aside and said the same thing. And right away, Parvati, as quick as lightning, says, okay, then I don't believe that he has a shield. Somebody else has a shield because he's trying to mislead us. Why would he ever tell you, Dan? And Dan is not buying it. So Parvati, in her brilliance, says, we need to murder somebody who wasn't even outside. none of the six. We're not even going to take a chance on it. Well, let's murder somebody who was inside the house. And Dan's wishy-washy, and she goes, or do you trust Peter? And Dan says, well, I just don't think he's that savvy. Oh, he's that savvy. He's that savvy and more. Yes, he's that savvy. It was his idea to have the six of them not reveal who it is, which Dan doesn't even know that yet. And this is his plan too. Oh, Dan, you're getting played by Peter if you fall for this one. And it looks like he might be. So then Dan says, all right, guys, I need this murder. I need to take out Bergie because Bergie said, basically, I'm the next person that is getting voted out, that he's putting my name down. I need to get rid of him. And they're like, oh, but he's not one of the guys that was in the castle. That's like, he goes, yeah, I know it's rolling the dice, but like, I need this murder. And they're like, well, that's not safe. Like, the safe bet is choosing somebody inside. I don't know. I'm so nervous right now. I'm like tingling. This is Thursday that I finally got a chance to watch this last episode and am recording this. So I'm going to be going out of town again this weekend. I will have my laptop with me so I can start editing it and everything. And hopefully it'll be out by Monday at the latest. And then I can catch up and watch episode 6. But I cannot wait until this evening, episode 6. I will be in my hotel room. And before I go to bed, I am putting on Traitors. I'm going to see what happened because I am so nervous right now. Dan thinks that writing MJ's name down would be a waste, which I agree with. He said writing Sandra's name down would be a waste. I don't 100% agree with that. I get the philosophy that she's not making waves, she's not throwing out any great strategy, all that stuff, but she's a good game player. MJ, she was just on a reality TV show. She's not into game playing. But Sandra, I think it makes sense to get rid of her. Even if she's not, doesn't seem like a threat right now, I feel like she could be a threat down the road. Somebody threw out John's name, and Dan just said, I don't know, I just would rather roll the dice on Bergie. So Dan said, we can get John, Sandra, or MJ, but I think all of those are a waste of murders. And we need to roll the dice. We either play it safe and get either John, MJ, or Sandra, or we roll the dice and we go for Bergie. Oh. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait until it drops tonight. Phaedra is friends with Bergie. She's like, oh, I love him to death. He's my Bergie-licious. That's funny. I didn't know that. I didn't know. I mean, we don't see 90% of the interactions that are happening, right? But I think that's cute that she's adopted him. Parvati is not feeling good about the decision. Dan said, I feel very confident that Bergie does not have a shield. I'm just praying right now that this is production planting the seed for everybody to make us all think that he went for Bergie and then we find out he didn't and that they played it safe. I pray. But Dan ends it by saying, this vote is either going to win me the game or lose me the entire thing. There you go. Although one would hope Parvati had more discussions that didn't end up on this episode with him to explain to Dan, listen, because he told me the same information, my head's on the chopping block too. If you're wrong, you and I are both now considered traitors. I don't think it's worth it. I really don't. Yes, Bergie might put your name down, but your name was put down by 4 people this time anyway. Just do what you do best. Work the crowd. Get everybody to focus on somebody else. So even if he and Peter both put your name down, or even another person puts your name down, that you have the majority of the votes going towards somebody else. That's what you need to do, Dan. Oh, okay. Oh, wait, that's not the last line. Phaedra comes out at the end and says, I cannot believe I'm agreeing to this murder. I mean, at the end of the game, I'm a team player. It's probably her Bergie-licious. No. This ruins everything. 2 traitors are going to be gone. Dang. Well, that's what we have for episode 5. thank you all for the recommendation to watch Traitors, because I'm enjoying it. I like the different kind of challenges. I like that it feels fresh and new and a different kind of reality show. I like it's not all based on how you balance on things and how long you can hold something up in the air or how fast you can run or swim or all that. I don't care about any of that stuff. Like, this is funny, quirky, unique, and not everyone does, but it's using your brain more, and I appreciate that in a challenge game. All right, I will see you next week with episode 6. Bye.